Why aren't people joining the military these days? Our recruiting numbers are down, that's pretty well known. But is it a woke generation? Is it lack of patriotism? Is it fat kids? Let's check it out. First off, let's go ahead and look at this claim that the military is woke and that's why no one wants to join, because it's usually a bunch of people who served for about 6 months to maybe 4 years and are going to be nothing more than a veteran for the rest of their life. They have no ability to be an individual and think for themselves. So let's look at this first thing, woke. Historically, the United States military has been on the forefront of civil rights in every aspect. The United States military allowed people to earn their freedom as a slave before any other job in the United States. The United States military desegregated officially July 26, 1948, when the United States didn't even do that, officially until the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement. Historically speaking, the United States military has been at the forefront of civil rights for quite a long time. So every time something changes in the military, the generation before says, oh no, that's it now. We're going to affect everything. We can't allow women in combat. We can't allow gays to serve openly. We can't allow, the people of African descent to serve openly in our military with our white soldiers because they'll infect them. Every generation beforehand thinks that the generation after them had it easier and is somehow going to be a degradation in their lethality. I can tell you from personal experience, having served over 10 years, I'm at 14 right now, treating people with dignity and respect will never degrade the lethality of a force. Matter of factly, it will actually increase the lethality of a force. I don't care what you do in your spare time. I don't care by what name you call God. I don't care what color of your skin is. That was really worded weird. What the color of your skin is. I shouldn't have worded it like that. But anyways, you will do the job just like everybody else and myself. You will do everything I have done, and I will never ask you to do anything that I have not done. So let's just go ahead and debunk that whole wokeness as it sits. While we're on that topic, before I move on to the next one, I will go ahead and say that there's a lot of individuals who are adamantly uneducated who think that you can serve openly in the United States Armed Forces having a they-them pronoun. And the reality is you cannot. There is no authorized doctrine for calling anybody they-them. There is no physical fitness standards for a they-them. There is no urinary observation standards, urinalysis observation for somebody who is a they-them. You identify as either male or female, and your records must match. Now, you can transition from male to female while in the United States Armed Forces, but once you are there, that is what you will remain until the time of your service has ended. Well, if it's not wokeness, then what is it? Well, if you ask most recruiters nowadays, and I have asked quite a few recruiters, it's MHS Genesis, which is Military Health System Genesis. Historically, individuals joining the armed forces, my generation and before, would lie about certain diagnoses before they enlisted in the military service. And up until the introduction of MHS Genesis, these things were also hidden, and the government didn't know any better, and they could absolve themselves from any kind of responsibility, either financially, morally, or ethically. Now they can no longer do that. And this is an interesting paradigm. So I had a member of my family, not going to say who, work for Denver Public Schools. And they straight up told me that those public schools would get more government funding if they had more students that were diagnosed with learning disabilities, either attention deficit hyperactive disorder, autism, anything along the realm of a learning disability. So what schools started doing is diagnosing everybody with ADHD and ADD, which is why we have a lot of falsely diagnosed adults nowadays. So they get on some kind of pills, they're hyper-focused now, the school gets more funding, they're happy. Previously, those individuals, no one was the wiser, and they would go and serve in the United States Armed Forces. Now, if you have ever taken any kind of psychological enhancers or anything like that, or ever been diagnosed with ADHD and been medicated for it, you are barred from serving in the United States Armed Forces. So public schools got what they wanted, but the military finds themselves lacking. Now, there are people who are in the military and get diagnosed while they are in the military and end up on things like Adderall and other drugs to help them work throughout the day, and they serve perfectly fine. I personally don't understand why this is such a big deal, but this is a bit of a problem for us. You also can no longer hide injuries. If you had a broken knee, a broken leg, a broken arm, or broken back, or anything along those lines that would previously disqualify you, Beforehand, you would just lie about it and go through all the physical standards and no one was the wiser. Now, you can no longer lie about it and you either have to get a waiver or you're barred from the ability to enter the United States Armed Forces. MHS Genesis has completely changed the game for individuals who are joining the military. There's a Military Times article, which I will go ahead and tag in the description, that the entire title of it is the genesis of today's recruiting crisis. And it goes into detail about how perjury and lying were pretty common. In World War II, individuals were lying about their age. In Civil War, individuals were lying about their age. I think the youngest soldier ever to serve in the American Armed Forces was like 12 and a half years old because somebody somewhere said, yeah, you look 18 to me, and went ahead and signed them up. So MHS Genesis has put a huge stop on a lot of things that were previously okay joining the military. It's not for me to choose what is right and what is wrong. I'm just giving you the facts. I would have to say that the next major problem that all recruiting has run into is a lack of patriotism or nationalism. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I encourage everybody to be educated about the issues that are happening in their country. But right now, we have a young generation who is angry about the way politics are happening. So naturally, they're not going to want to put themselves in a position that they can no longer utilize their First Amendment because they are a member of the armed forces. So I can understand that to a degree. My generation, and I say this openly, not in a derogatory way. Usually when someone in the military says, well, back in my day, it's a real negative thing. I try and do these things to educate. So my generation came in right after 9/11. I came in 2009, which is 8 years after 9/11. I was still pretty angry. I watched 9/11 when I was in 7th grade in my math class. I saw the towers fall. I saw the second plane impact the towers. I saw people getting pulled out of the rubble. I watched all that happen. I was still very angry. So naturally, it's service over self. That was a big thing in my generation. The younger generation nowadays, it's 2023, so 18 years old. Oh, I don't math in public. What, 2025? Or 2005 is the generation that is able to enlist in our armed forces nowadays. These are individuals who weren't born until after that. They don't have that service over self mentality. Now, there are individuals who do seek out the United States military because they do want to serve. They had uncles who served, aunts who served. But then again, that runs into the MHS Genesis problem. So I would say lack of patriotism and lack of nationalism is a big factor. The next one we got is children are weaker. I'm just going to be completely honest. Your generation, my generation, the generations before us, we spent a lot of our time outside drinking from the garden hose, scraping our knees. We didn't wear helmets. We didn't wear knee pads. We got injuries and blunt force trauma like a grown-up, like a big boy. You rub some dirt in it. And while we kept, making these children safer, we were also coddling them and their immune systems were suffering. They weren't being exposed to the same things we were. They weren't drinking as much milk, right? And, now that has been disproved as having an increased bone density. But a study, I'm reading this off of HuffPost.uk, a 20% decrease in children's muscle strength and a 30% drop in muscle endurance over a 16-year study. The Fortnite generation gets injured a lot easier. I'm going to be completely transparent. Now, the generation before me was stronger than I am. The generation after me has lower muscle strength and endurance. Our drill sergeants in basic training are trying to deal with these issues as much as they possibly can. So we wonder when we drive by and we see a platoon full of soldiers that are all on crutches because they have lower body injuries, because they've never done these things before in their life. So even if they can get through MHS Genesis and they get in, the chances of them getting through basic training are getting lower by the day because they don't have the muscle density, the bone density, and the strength to be able to get through the physical fitness standards. Now, this is not anybody's fault. This is just we're taking better care of people than we ever have previously. I don't think this is a negative thing. It's real easy for the recruiters to say, well, stop having fat, lazy kids, and for the parents to say, well, you're being mean to my little Tommy and little Timmy. There's no one to blame here. It's just we're taking better care of people nowadays than we were previously. We have air conditioning, we have heating, we have climate control, we have comfortable chairs. I'm sitting in a gaming chair right now that has lumbar support and massaging thingies in it. I am a pampered man. And I will say last, but certainly not least, to all my vets out there, to all my active duty, the people who are going to join already know the answer to this question. When was the last time you Googled your branch? U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, right? The last time you Googled it. I'm going to tell you what you see when you Google the United States Army. The first thing you see is USAREC, the United States Army recruiting page. The next thing you see is a bunch of articles about U.S. Army buys, U.S. Army buys, U.S. Army buys. All the projects that we have coming on, IBCS, MSHORAD, I think all the cool things that I normally talk about. You know what happens when you get to page 2 or 3 of Google? You start seeing things like Vanessa Guillen. You see leaders motorboating subordinates. You see individuals getting away and being forced to retire after committing sexual assault or sexual harassment in our formations. Now, these things were never not happening in our formations. It's just now they're getting out there. And you can't address a problem unless you make it public. We have to address these problems. Now, we are not there yet. I think that at any time, if we admit the SHARP program is functioning, is perfect, then we have crippled ourselves from the ability to ever make an improvement again. So we will never, in my opinion, the program will never be perfect because there is always an improvement you can make. But you have America's sons and daughters. You leaders, me, a leader, right? America's sons and daughters are entrusting you with their safety and their well-being. I have enough things on my plate. I have enemy missiles to worry about. I have training to worry about, the status of my equipment. I have all these things to worry about to make sure, Joe Snuffy or Jane Snuffy is taken care of without introducing additional stressors like sexually harassing somebody or sexually assaulting somebody. Leaders that do that should completely absolve themselves from being called a leader. They should never be able to be called that ever again. They should be publicly humiliated. They should lose every aspect of any retirement, and they should be a registered sex offender. Again, I don't entirely run the program, nor do I have the ability to change things as they are right now, and I know that there are individuals in my formation who I have taken care of throughout incidents like this. It is voluntary fratricide. That is the best way to explain it. Fratricide is blue on blue, right? Or friendly fire. There's no such thing as friendly fire. We call it fratricide. And it doesn't just take one person out of the fight. That one person is going to obviously be out of the fight, but you got to have a leader with them to make sure that they're okay. You got to have somebody with them. Then whoever did it is also out of the fight. The investigating officer is also out of the fight. Any leaders involved in that investigation are out of the fight. So you pretty much just took your entire unit and screwed it over. You may have taken away their ability to deploy. You may have cost people their lives because of a stupid joke or self-gratification. So while I agree that these things are awful, they are absolutely awful. We need to make them public and we need to address them. But when these things become public, we don't need to sweep it under the rug. Oh, hey, this person's going to get to retire. It was just a silly joke. No. We need to make it very, very, very public that they will never have a future. They have taken away any aspect of having a future in our armed forces or outside of our armed forces. That is the way you get justice. Now, there's going to be people in my comment section, what about false reports? What about false reports? What about false reports? There is a large difference between a false report and an actual report. There is a whole lot of unsubstantiated in here. Just because there's not enough evidence to hit somebody does not mean that it's a false report. Oh, my buddy got taken out because of a false report. I tell you right now, I have seen behind the scenes on many reports. As a temporary first sergeant, as a platoon sergeant, I have been privy to that information. I have sat there alongside investigating officers and gathered information. And you know what I found out? Never in my military career have I ever seen somebody go down who wasn't guilty. Every single time the person had deserved it. Now, I'm not saying that's not impossible, that somebody who was innocent was in a bad situation. Not saying it's impossible, but every single time I've seen it, which is over a dozen, the person deserved it. They exactly got what was coming to them. So overall, I guess the arching theme is the problem with recruiting is a myriad of different things. It's MHS Genesis. It's a generational gap. It's the inability to lie about getting in the military anymore. It's a lack of patriotism and nationalism. The jobs are out there. The jobs out there may offer better things than what is going on in our military right now, and that's okay. We're not at war right now. Are people needed? Don't know. It's not really for me to decide. I'm not USAREC. So, and of course, last but not least, what we do to people in our military has a lasting effect. Think about any female in your life, your wife, your daughter, your sister, your mother, your aunts, if they have served in the military, there is a pretty high probability that during their time, they were a victim. And if that doesn't make you emotionally upset and physically angry to think about that, I have a little sister in the Navy. That scares the shit out of me. We can do better. They deserve better. We will be better. So as always, do not give in to the 22 a day. Every single one of you are amazing, and I will see you guys right here next time. Don't forget to support Ariel Resupply Coffee, 10% off, link in bio. Play me out.